You do need to charge what it takes to run a company.
Yeah, it's a mathematical formula. It's not by guess and by golly.
I love that. It's not by guess and by golly. I talk to apprentices about how to get more out of their apprenticeship, and you are the best instructor I know in the Washington area. I don't know anybody else.
I do continuing ed classes for license renewal.
Okay.
Through CITC. The more I do it, the more I like it.
Welcome to Behind the Windshield with Dennis the Apprentice, the podcast where we bring you a diverse lineup of guests, apprentices, seasoned professionals, visionary entrepreneurs, business owners, and master craftsmen every week. I'm your host, Dennis. Yes, I am an apprentice because I'm never going to stop learning and trying new things. I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, and I'm a business owner of a Zoom grain franchise in Seattle, Washington. And I'm on a mission to help hardworking young people get a profitable career in the trades without a college education. So this podcast is for people who are visionary entrepreneurs, apprentices in any trade, people who want to start their own business, and even young people without any experience at all. We bring you stories, insights, and experiences that will help you learn from the success and mistakes of guests and even myself to boost your growth and accelerate your advancement in your own career. You can find this podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's go! Bob Larson, welcome to Behind the Windshield with Dennis the Apprentice at the PHCC booth at the Great Northwest Show. Is that an intro or what?
I think so.
Awesome. Bob Larson, this is an honor. I talk to apprentices about how to get more out of their apprenticeship, and you are the best instructor I know in the Washington area. I don't know anybody else.
I'm flattered.
Yeah. So you teach apprenticeship. You're out there teaching people how to pass the test, and what else do you teach?
I do continuing ed classes for license renewal.
Okay.
Through CITC. And the more I do it, the more I like it.
Awesome. And you taught some of our guys, you did the refresher course and helped some of our guys get through the test and pass. So you go to shops and stuff in the area and do that as well?
Yep, I've been all the way up north, Skagit Plumbing, and
awesome.
And down to Olympia. But mostly I like to use my own facility because I've got it set up and all my equipment there, and all my stuff is there.
I have to come see you've made some updates.
Yeah, we put in a high-tech classroom with smart screens, with interactive touch screens, all that. I'm just now finishing up a training center up above my classroom with working toilets, working sinks, urinals, flushometers, kitchen sink, all that stuff.
Awesome. That's the way to go, Bob, for sure.
Yeah, not as impressive as yours.
Yeah,
I've seen yours.
We've been at it a while.
But I tell you what, I did get some clear PVC pipe to.
Oh, good.
Because I have a crawl space under. I built a bathroom with a crawl space under it.
Yes, yeah.
And we wanted to run clear pipe for some of it to see what was going on inside the pipes.
Yeah.
That stuff is expensive. Super expensive.
What's funny is that the plumbers love that. They always look at that, like that draws everybody's attention. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, and haven't done it yet, but looking forward to running a cable in there to see what it's doing, and a jetter to see what a jetter's doing inside that pipe. And maybe we could set it up with a clog of some kind and see what happens to it.
Have you seen that where they put the chicken in there and then they blast it out? Have you seen that?
Not that specific one, no.
There's a YouTube video where they stuff a dead turkey or something in there and cut through it with a jet.
Sounds morbid.
It's pretty impressive. Anyway, well, we're talking about, let's talk about a couple things. PHCC as well. You're a member of PHCC.
Long time now.
Long time, longer than me. How'd you get involved with PHCC?
So I remember when I first started out, it was a typical story. Just working out of my garage.
Yeah.
And I had a Datsun pickup with a pipe rack that I built myself and a service bed that I built myself, and started out working out of my garage. And back then, my perception of the industry was that all these other plumbers out there are my enemy. They're trying to take food off of my table and make my kids starve.
Yes.
And so that was like the way everybody kind of viewed each other. You go into the supply houses and, hey, bud, but we're not friends.
Right.
And then I think it was Charlie Mitchell introduced me to PHCC and talked me into going to a meeting. And I came to find out that the plumbers there are my friends, and that almost all of the guys there were not only willing to help or to give me advice and stuff, but to actually physically help me out with stuff.
Yes.
And sometimes they would get busy and they'd say, "Hey, call Bob."
Yeah.
And I did the same thing for those guys. And
right.
And or if I'm good at one thing, another person's not good at. Like I do a bunch of radiant heating now, and I get a lot of referrals for radiant heating from other plumbers who are my friends.
Yeah.
And that's what PHCC is, where I learned all that.
Yes.
And it's a very good thing to be part of. So I teach. I get in my continuing ed classes. I get a bunch of mostly older plumbers in there because the younger guys seem to like to do it online.
Yeah.
But I'm always telling the older plumbers that PHCC can't be beat for the value you get out of it.
Right. Right. I was a latecomer myself. I had some big shoes to fill. Gene Johnson's my father-in-law. I took over. He had some big shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's still a presence.
He's still a presence.
I see him on Facebook.
Yes, yes. And so I'm more of a shy personality, and so I realized how much I didn't know, and so I really backed off and went to figure things out for myself, and I didn't reach back out until I felt like I knew what I was doing. And I would never do that again. That was the wrong approach. I didn't know, because the plumbers all seemed scary.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that if I would have reached out and joined PHCC and said, "Hey, help me, I'm trying to fill Gene Johnson's shoes,"
yeah,
I would have got help.
Absolutely.
I would have got help immediately.
Yeah.
So the network, the power of the network, and then when we bought our building, some people say, "Well, what's the network all about?" But the network, any network, right?
Mm-hmm.
But specifically in plumbing, when we needed a banker, we have an existing friend, Paul Long, that was in the organization. I made one phone call. We were already friends, and he took care of our banking for us. And if we weren't a part of that network, how do you find it? How do you find and choose and shop a banker, right?
Good question.
I don't know. And so
I hear that about plumbers all the time too.
Yeah. So the network was beautiful. So it served us very, very well. What can PHCC do better? What should they start doing or not, or stop doing or start doing? Do you think?
Well, originally I used to think getting involved with what's going on in our unsolicited partners in the government, because a government official has the power to shut me down.
Yes.
If they really decided they wanted to.
Yes.
And so getting more involved with that, but in the last 2 years, I've seen that happen to such an impressive degree that it's fulfilling my desires along those lines.
Just keep it going.
Yeah.
What you're speaking about is at the last labor and industry meeting, we had that place packed.
Yeah.
That was cool, wasn't it? To be usually I go there and there's like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 plumbers in a big huge room.
Well, I've been to those meetings 5 times, I think.
Okay.
And I was a president of PHCC 12 years ago or something like that.
Yes.
And even with that, I've only been to 5 of those meetings. So, So that meeting was really cool to see.
Yeah, I think we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
So we get more.
I'll be there.
Yeah, that was a powerful meeting. I think it sent a message and it helped us all realize what's going on and what needs to be done and all that. Very cool. So let's talk about apprentices. So, a lot of my messages, I'm trying to. When you go to college, there's a syllabus. Take this class, then this class, then this class. Mm-hmm. But if you don't do that and you go into trades, it's kind of like the school of hard knocks concept.
Yeah.
And I think that's crazy. It doesn't have to be hard knocks. Let's give them some traction. So what are some ways that you've developed or you see to help an apprentice get traction in the trade?
Well, I know PHCC actually, National, has a curriculum.
Yes.
And I've got the books that I've tried to employ somewhat, but haven't been consistent at it. And CITC, I actually started with CITC in an apprenticeship program.
Okay.
And they have a curriculum there.
Right.
And but that's so in Washington, it's not. There's a difference between an apprentice and a trainee. So an apprentice is somebody who's actually going to a licensed school program,
right,
like CITC or the union. A trainee is someone who's just learning on the job. So there is no requirements, no curriculum, other than you get your hours signed off, and as soon as you have enough hours, they say, oh, you must know enough, which is not always the case.
Yeah, so we find that out when they can't pass the test.
Right.
Yes.
Which, last I heard, had a 70% failure rate.
Yeah, I heard 20%, only 20% pass the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 20 or 30%, yeah. So, but in our shop, we have code training every Wednesday morning. Mm-hmm. And just that 1 hour a week over 3 years, if they come to the classes, they just go pass the tests. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure you discovered the same thing.
Yeah. Yep, I also do private tutoring to help people pass the test, and frequently it's after they flunk their second time, then they come seeking help.
Yes.
Typical guy.
Yeah, typical. That's so typical. That's hilarious. So, what about an apprenticeship in the workforce? Like, what can they do to get traction and speed up their learning?
Oh, I know several guys that are so self-motivated that they taught themselves. One guy in particular, he taught himself how to do hydronic heating, and he became the expert in our company at hydronic heating. Even he knew more than I did. I would go ask him questions.
Yeah.
And
so how do you do that?
So it was pretty much all online. Calefi has all kinds of training stuff. The booth right over here for Takeo, they have all kinds of training things.
Yes.
And there's so many opportunities. It's when I was a teenager, or even in my 20s, there's nothing like the opportunity that someone who's self-motivated has to learn anything.
What Takeo at night is Takeo at night or something like that, right?
Yep.
Takeo at night, and then Calefi's got classes, and if you're interested, you can learn every single night.
Yep.
I think that is.
And there's this thing called Dennis the Apprentice on YouTube I've heard about too.
Yes, and I'm more on the soft skills side, like show up on time. I had one of my tips is if you're going to be late, show up with donuts. Yeah. I did that. Is in my apprenticeship. If I was late, I would just show up with donuts, and I might have actually woke up late. But they thought I was late because I was stopping to get donuts. And I had an apprentice the other day. I had a training Thursday morning, and he showed up 3 minutes late with some donuts. And we all clapped, like, well played, well played. Awesome. So how are you finding apprentices these days? Are you having a hard time finding young people?
We've actually been fairly blessed as far as people just showing up and applying for a job, because what I hear is they say, hey, I hear that you're a good company to work for.
Yeah.
And so just having that kind of culture is a huge step towards that.
Yes.
And then, of course, I think 2 or 3 of our trainees right now are referrals from, like one of them is the boyfriend of the daughter of one of our plumbers. Or
awesome.
That kind of stuff.
Awesome. How do you think the message is getting out that you're a good place to work? Like if another company is trying to attract young people, how do they do that?
Well, one thing is a focus on teaching, because we hear from a lot of the guys that have worked for other companies, they say pretty much they ride along with a plumber for 3 or 4 weeks, and then they're thrown into their own truck.
I hear that too.
And they feel overwhelmed and frustrated and don't know what to do, but we have a focus on teaching, just like you do.
Yeah.
And we have classes every week, like you do. The third Saturday of every month, every Friday morning we have our code class or something related. The third Saturday of every month we from 8 to noon. We had one just last week where we do some hands-on stuff, soldering, cabling, jetting. Pretty much anything, threading pipe, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And guys love hands-on stuff, which is why I built my training center upstairs too, because we're going to, in fact, last Saturday was the third Saturday, and we did the rough-in on my training center.
Perfect. That's how I built my first training center. The Apprentices built it. Mm-hmm. It was Thursday night class from 6 to 8. I bought pizza and beer. I did to start with.
Shocking.
And and everyone showed up. And we built the training lab together.
Yeah.
And then after it got going, I calmed it down, just pizza and pop. But it worked, and they built it themselves. And there was this passion and energy that I never imagined. I envisioned it, but I couldn't believe it. It was much better than I imagined.
Yeah.
And then that started it. But they built it themselves, so that's a great way to do it. A lot of people think, I don't have time to build it. Let them build it. They want to learn so bad, they will actually do that.
Yeah.
So and then they have ownership in it.
And that's the most effective way to learn for most of these guys.
It's kinetic, doing it. Hands on.
Absolutely.
Hands on, absolutely. What? Tell me about the future. Like as a growing company, like what? As an apprentice goes in a company, where can they go? Like what are the career paths that you see for them?
So we want to make sure that they know what they're doing and they're totally comfortable with doing it. And when we feel that they're ready, some guys some guys with a lot of experience, it might be 6 months. Some it's a year, some it's 2 years. Mm-hmm. In fact, we have one guy that just got into his own truck, and he could have gotten into his own truck 6 months ago, but he told us that he didn't think he was ready.
Yes, yeah.
And as it turns out, that was very wise on his part. He's doing great.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I remember in my apprenticeship, I did not think I was ready. I remember the guys would sit me down and ask me questions, and I could answer every question. I said, "You're ready," but I just didn't feel like I was ready. And I personally needed a little pushing to get into it. And others, they know they're not ready. Like I interview techs too, or apprentices too, where they come in and they're like, "I'm in a truck and I shouldn't be," and they went out of the truck and they want to learn some more.
Yeah.
So very cool. What have you always gone to trade shows or?
Yeah, back in the old days when I first got involved with PHCC, I thought going to those meetings was an investment that I could barely afford, because there's most everything I could barely afford.
Yes.
And that's the way it was in the early days. And finally, the very first trade show I ever went to was the PHCC National Convention.
Yeah.
It was in Chicago that year, I believe.
Okay.
And they have all kinds. So it was like 3 days, and there was all these seminars where you could go and learn stuff. And I started to learn how much I didn't know. And most of what I didn't know was stuff that I absolutely needed to know in order to succeed as a businessman.
Yes.
So I got this from Service Roundtable. It's an audio file called The Impoverished Craftsman. I used to play that at all my classes. Not so much lately, but it's all about the typical story of a craftsman is somebody who says, "I'm tired of working for a boss. I'm going to start my own business, hang out a shingle, go to work,
charge less than your employer."
Yep. In fact, when I started my business in 1992, in order to decide how much I was going to charge, back then everything was hourly. Very few people did flat rate back then. I asked my wife to call different plumbing companies and ask how much they charge.
Yes.
We got everywhere from $50 an hour to $95 an hour at that time, 92. And I said, okay, I'm charging $48.50 an hour.
Yes.
And then I'll be just as busy as I want, and I'm making over twice as much as I was making before.
Yes.
Man, oh man, I'm going to be rich quickly here. Within a year and a half, I had to refinance my house to pay taxes. And I remember my Datsun pickup broke down, and I needed a bigger truck anyway. And I said, oh man, I hope I can qualify for a loan.
Yes.
Because if I can't qualify for a loan, I'm done.
Yes.
And now we need a truck, and we go pay cash for it.
Yes.
Because I learned the things you have to learn to run a business. So
you do need to charge what it takes to run a company.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mathematical formula. It's not by guess and by golly.
Yeah. It's yeah. I love that. It's not by guess and by golly. That's what we did. When I first came, it was $88 an hour. We were charging $88 an hour. We called all my competitors. Gene Johnson told me who my competitors were, so I called them all, and they were all charging $88 an hour.
Uh-oh.
So I went to 92. Well, this is what they were doing. So I went to 92, and 6 months later, I thought I was going to get rich, $4 more an hour, right? And then I called around 6 months later, and everybody was $92 an hour. I was just like, but we're all different.
Yeah.
Like, it made no sense at all.
No.
So how'd you figure out flat rate?
I went to a seminar right here in Bellevue, I think it was. What was his name? The guy from Wisconsin. He's the father of
Frank Blau.
Frank Blau. Yeah. And he was a very corrosive individual. I remember several people got up halfway through his thing. He said, "Well, there goes those losers."
Yeah.
And he was not an easy guy to get along with, but I sat through the whole thing and got his book and said, "You know what? This stuff is true.
He made sense.
What I'm learning here is true."
Yeah.
And in fact, the year that we switched over to flat rate, I think Our gross sales went up 30%. Our per ticket went up 35%.
Yeah.
And our net profit went up 12%.
Right.
Which the average plumbing contractor makes between 2 and 3% net profit.
Yes.
Which is ridiculous.
And inflation is what percent? Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, we learned, I started adding some bonus structures in place, and then I teaching my guys how to sell, and I'm like, wait a second. If I don't pay these guys better, they're going to leave. And so I better learn what this flat rate's all about. And then it made all the sense in the world, right? Mm-hmm. We did a one-man shop exercise. Kenny Chapman led us through the one-man truck exercise. And then I got to sit with Frank Lau, too. I was at a seminar, and I was sitting at his table for lunch. And then the little bell rings for classes to start, and everybody gets up and splits. And I'm like, I'm not leaving to go to some stupid seminar. I'm going to sit there with Frank Lau.
Yeah.
So I got to sit for an hour with Frank Lau and talk, and it was super important. Mm-hmm. Helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I had a situation like that. It was at one of the PHCC national conventions, I think in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I was sitting at lunch with, my 65-year-old brain doesn't function. He's the guy that used to run the trucks with the picture of him on.
Is that Rick Mayo? No, George Brazil. George Brazil.
I got to sit with George Brazil at lunch. The bell rang. I sat for another hour and a half talking with George Brazil.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of things that those conventions are fantastic for.
Yes.
Not just the seminars and the stuff you learn, but the people you get to talk to.
Yeah, and then I would go to the cocktail hours as well. It's like you're tired from the classes, but then everybody goes to network and visit, and you can ask people real questions, and they'll give you this is what I do. This is what they said at the seminar, but this is what I do, and it's just super powerful information to actually talk to people.
Yeah.
And what you find is everybody's glad to help and teach and share what they're doing, because there's so much work. There's no way it's competition.
Yeah. In fact, my business partner, who's buying my business from me right now, he was in Indiana this week. He just got back this morning, but he spent the entire week at the shop of a friend that we know, who's doing things really well. He's got a well-oiled machine going on there, and he's in a small little town in Indiana.
Yeah.
But Robert went back there and said that he learned a lot.
Yes.
So that kind of stuff. I mean, he took 4 days off of work here, paid for airfare, got a bunch of flight delays because of weather.
Yeah.
And but it was. He said, no doubt that it was worth it.
Yeah, and it was free, right?
Yeah. He didn't have to pay it.
Yeah.
For classes, he had to pay for travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've had that too. I had a guy come up here he was from the Midwest somewhere, and he's like, I follow you, and can I come and hang out at your shop for a day? And I was like, of course. And it was an honor, right? And so I'd share with him everything I was doing and how I do it and why I do it, and hopefully it helped him. But I found that too, that everybody likes to help each other out.
Yeah. In fact, I made a trip from Tacoma up north to go to CPI's, one of their employee meetings, and to find out how to run a good meeting. Yeah. And it helped.
Yeah. Very good. So anything cool at this trade show so far?
Oh, there's always something. I found this cool new a coupling that Fernco came out with.
Okay.
Where you just buy one 4-inch coupling and it'll fit everything from concrete down to PVC pipe with one coupling.
No way.
Where's
that at?
Just about 4 or 5 booths up here.
We got to go. Awesome. Bob, thanks for being on the show. This is so cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for sticking around to the end of the show. Did you agree? Did you disagree? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Making the trades the place to be for young people is a team effort. So share this with someone and help us all out.